So with these weathering sets, you get a nice little brush just inside here, and I personally like to use, it is the orange rust, which is maybe a little bit too much in some cases, but basically you just lightly rub the surface with our applicator here, and what you can do is you can sort of make these nice sort of streaks, and they're really easy for someone who's like a beginner to the hobby, because we can just streak down like so, and hopefully, as you can see, we can get some nice sort of effects from that. Again, you might want to, you know, get a cotton wool bird, sort of tidy the edges up so you're showing where that grease and grime sort of coming from. Just bring you in on that. But as I said, I didn't really want to put any on the top here, so just to show you again, that is basically it. And it's one of these products where you've literally only got to come along, cotton wool bird, a little bit moist, and you can literally just clean that up all nice. Because we've got that gloss surface to work with, you know, you make a mistake, you can just clean it all up. But I personally like to use that technique, would say sort of where the landing gear is, we can have just a little bit there. You got a bit there as well, and just got some more there. Nothing sort of major. When it comes to like flaps and slats and ailerons and stuff, I do like to, you know, get out the streaking effect, which I'm quite liking that. So that's a nice two-stage sort of weathering technique that we can do there. It's probably a little bit too much for this aircraft, but I did want to show you. Really, I've just got to go around and sort of equal this all up now, doing both sides with our weathering effect, and we are literally getting to the end of this build actually. Right, we now come to what is probably the best part of any build, and that is to put this final matte coat down. This is where it finally comes together, and without cockpits or anything like that, we've got no canopy mask to remove, so we literally spray this on and it's basically done. So what we're going to do, I'm going to be using a new sort of matte varnish here, because in the past I have used Winsor & Newton's matte UV varnish, which I know a lot of people have found it a little bit hard to sort of get hold of that, especially in different countries. So you know, let's try something new, which I do like. I've tested it a few times, and that is AK Interactive's matte varnish. Nice product here. We can thin this with their thinners. And actually it's quite a thick matte varnish as well, so you really sort of need to thin this quite a bit, probably a little bit more than sort of your normal 50-50, you know, maybe 60% thinners to varnish. Right, because as you can see, that is just so thick, it's not even like mixing yet. So just getting my scrap paintbrush wherever that has gone. Oh, couldn't find my paintbrush, so I'll use a different crappy old one, and then we'll just mix that up, and you can almost see sort of how thick it is in there. Right, so we really do sort of need to sort of mix this in, get it all mixed, and have that little bit more sort of acrylic thinners than you normally would do, because as I say, it is thicker. Right, but there we go, we're almost there. Spray a bit out, see how it's flowing, doesn't seem too bad. Let's get the model out, and you know, as always, and you don't really need, when it comes to matte varnish, you don't really need to whack on loads and loads of coats. It's not a protective coat in a sense, it's more of it's just mattifying all these gloss coats we've used to protect everything. So just coming in with sort of like a quick light misty coat. Right, spraying my air pressure at sort of around about the 20 PS mark. I'm just cutting to air to dry. That did seem to spray on a little bit sort of speckly, so I'm sort of going to add a bit more thinners to that. As I say, it is surprisingly thick, and you surprisingly do need to add more thinners than you probably probably used to. But it is a simple case of that, you know, just thin it down a little bit more, spray it on as you would any normal coat that I've basically been teaching you throughout this step by step. Right, start off with that misty coat, then come in with sort of like a normal medium coat, and hopefully, as you can see, it's already starting to kind of, as we say, mattify, and that's going to probably need maybe 2 coats just to get that going right, but it's getting there. You just want to get it to that nice matte look, and then really I'm kind of thinking maybe a bit of pigments, gluing a few things on, and we're done. Right, so there is the matte coat, which really does sort of bring everything out, I do feel. You get rid of that glossy protective coat, it goes all matte, it starts looking into scale, and it does sort of bring out the weathering nicely as well. Last sort of thing we're going to be doing here is a little bit more weathering, very tiny bit more weathering, but just on the underside we're putting on our wheel well doors. Now for this, coming out with some Zappa Gappa medium CA glue, putting it on some sort of scrap lid or something. I'll use a cotton wool bud lid, and what I've done, I'll do another one actually, getting a cocktail stick and a blade. You can buy CA glue applicators, but what we can also do is we can get one of these cocktail sticks, and we're just going to cut a V shape out of this, right? Just right on the end we cut a little bit of a V shape. Right, it might be a little bit tricky, but then do you know what, cocktail sticks are cheap as chips. Right, so we've cut out that little bit of a V shape, hopefully you just see in there, and what that's going to do, it's going to give our cocktail stick a little gap there that allows our CA glue to suck into that little gap, and it turns into a nice super glue applicator. What we're going to do is we're going to start off, we're going to get our first wheel well door just here. Now with these wheel well doors, it's quite cool because we can actually just dip the ends in our CA glue. Right, just a nice little bit on the end, right, and then we can just position this before it glues into place. Right, position it, you want to make sure you get it nice and level, right, so it does dry pretty quickly. Get your Mark 1 eyeball, sort of get that at a nice 90-degree angle, matching up with the one on the opposite side, even sort of look at it from the left and even the right, just make sure it's all good. Do it quickly because CA glue is going to dry pretty quickly. I'm happy with the position of that, that was nice, quick and easy. Then with our cocktail stick that we've made, you know, dip that in the CA glue, it's going to suck up into that little gap we got there, and what I like to do is just come in and right where, let's bring you in, right where our joins are, we can just get a nice bit into that. Let's get a bit more on the cocktail stick. Now I would be using a thin CA glue for this bit, but mine's all dried up. Right, I'll just show you. This is what you would want to be using, is this thin CA glue. It's the purple one by Zap. It's really nice and thin, and the whole idea is because it's so thin, it will just suck in and underneath the join, so it's got that capillary action to just suck in, get under there and get exactly where you want to glue it, to make an even stronger a stronger glue there. And and it doesn't leave like blobs of glue. So the last thing you want to see is big blobs of super glue on your join lines and everything. It does look a little bit nasty, especially if maybe you've broken it once or twice and the super glue builds up and you've got these big blobs. Thin CA glue, you won't get the blobs, it just sucks in underneath there and glues it in quite nicely. However, as I say, mine's just dried up and gone all nasty. So medium CA glue, you know, it's still just as fine really. It does the job, as you can see just there. Next thing is as well, because we've been using CA glue will dry glossy, right? So what I like to do with a bit of leftover matte varnish, what I like to do is come in and just spray the joins. Okay, I'm just lightly spraying where the joins are, just to make sure we're not going to get any of that leftover CA glue shining through. You know, if you sort of come at a different angle at the aircraft, or it might just sort of start shining like all glossy and you go, oh, that's CA glue there. You know, that last little spray of matte varnish, you know, will remove that sort of problem, especially if you've accidentally made a blob of super glue, say, or you know, it'll just mattify it and sort of blend it in, feather it in with the rest of the model. So the next thing is I want to just finally do a little bit of pigments. So I just want to whack a bit of pigments here at the exhaust end, just to give it a little bit sort of a dirty sort of engine, sort of, you know, all that kind of soot coming out of the exhaust. So I'm going to be using burnt jet engine pigments here by AK Interactive, which I'm just going to get out a brush. I'm going to dip it in and I'm going to get a nice little amount, which I'm just going to put on a kitchen paper towel, put the lid back on. I'm doing this because I want to be able to control what pigments I put on. So put it on the kitchen paper towel instead of just going straight from the pot onto the model. You know, you can't control it as well. So by just doing that, I can then just sort of like touch the edges with our pigment, and we're just sort of going to sort of dab this down and try and work it in. But as I say, I just want to sort of touch the tips of the exhausts. As you can see where I'm touching it, I'm just going to give it that little bit of a black, sort of dusty, sooty type look to it. As you can see, just build it up in layers. Right, now I'm doing this sort of at the end with a matte coat on, because when putting down pigments, depending on what surface you put it on, depends how the pigments go down. You put it on a glossy surface, say if we did it before we put this matte coat on, the pigments don't hold so well on a glossy surface, right? But if we put it on this matte surface as we've done now, because we've just put it on after doing the matte coat, these pigments will stick a lot better. Right, and that's the whole idea of, you know, putting pigments down on a matte surface or a glossy surface, depending on how much of the pigments you sort of want to go down. Right, so I'm just trying to get some of the edges. Right, but as you can see, that's just going to sort of give it that little bit of an edge to it, and I'm just trying to feather this in. Right, maybe sort of just tap a bit of the excess off, blow it off camera. Right, and there we've got it's just a little tinge just on the tips. As you can see, it just darkens it up, gives it a little bit of a weathering effect, and then we're going to want to seal that also in with a matte coat. So I'm just going to put this kitchen paper towel out the way, because if we start getting airbrushes out, it's just going to blow it everywhere, and it is a messy thing to mess about with. Right, so then I'm coming in with the last of my matte varnish, right, and that should just hopefully seal that in rather nicely. Hopefully, as you can see, it just gives it that little bit of an edge. Next thing, and probably the last thing now, is we have some of these tiny little pieces. I've done the underside, but we've got things like these little antennas and stuff. We can now simply sort of cut these off. Let's get out our cutters. We want to be careful with these because these have been sprayed and everything. So we're just going to sort of cut it, leaving about 1 mil right where we cut it, so there's a little bit left there. And then this is the tricky part, is sort of holding it and then sort of trimming this up. Right, so you want to be careful when using your blade. Right, we'll just get the sides as well because it does sort of bulge out at the sides a bit. Right, now the thing is, this is going to need a little bit of touching up with the paint just there, which is no big deal. But before we actually do some touching up, ooh, I just dropped that, we want to glue this into place. So I'm just going to get a little bit of our Tamiya extra thin cement, and I'm going to actually put a little bit in where this piece is going to go. Right, that's just so it can hold in there without us messing around trying to hold it and glue it. Right, and then we're just going to place this in, give it a little push down, get it in position. Again, get your head down to the table and you want to see, you know, have we got this at that nice 90-degree angle, and that is looking good. And then maybe just a tiny little bit, just touch the edges very carefully, let that capillary action sort of get in and under there. And there we go, that should hopefully be nicely glued into place. Leave it a little bit to glue, come back with the original colour, just do that little bit of touch up, and it is all good. Actually, I've just remembered there is one last thing. We want to do some navigation lights, so let's work on them. But as you can see, this is looking good now. So next up, we want to do these navigation lights. We haven't got like nice clear ones, but what we can do is we'll start off with extreme metal aluminium, which is 479 by AK Interactive. Right, this is going to put the base down, the primer basically, and what we're going to do is we're just going to nice and easily just paint a navigation light. Alright, just like so. 2 coats should get that all nice and sorted. Right, after doing that, that's all nice and dry. Remember, use their actual cleaner to like clean up your actual brush, because it is quite a tough one to sort of clean up. So you will definitely want to use their cleaner. Right, and then what we're going to use here is we're going to be using Tamiya's X-47, which is a clear red, and we're also going to be using on the opposite side X-25 clear green. Really cool paints for sort of getting that sort of clear looking sort of glass look when you haven't got actual glass clear parts to actually use for your navigation lights. These can be sometimes a bit tricky to open, but this one's alright. Not the best for painting with, to be totally and utterly honest, but they do the job rather nicely. So all we need to do is very carefully just paint this on, and because we've got this clear red and we've got our base of that nice aluminium by AK Interactive, it does give us that sort of nice looking sort of navigation light look to it, where you sort of, you know, it's looking, because we put the matte coat on, this is going to dry all nice and glossy, so it's going to look shiny. It's got that red in it, but it's also got that aluminium coming through as well, giving you that sort of navigation type look to it. And that is it. We are basically done now. I'm just going to finish painting up this red and the green, and that is it, all done. So here we are, we've finally finished our X-47B by Freedom Model Kit 148 scale. So now that we've finished, let's have a final conclusion of the kit itself. Just have a quick little look. As you can see, looking rather cool. We'll have some close-ups of this later, but I just want to sort of give a rundown of the kit now. So quick looking at the instructions now. If we have a little look inside, problems with this kit. Well, the landing gear was actually rather nicely detailed and does look and rather cool, which, as you can see, if we bring you in, the landing gear, it has got a fair bit of detail on there, and with that little bit of photo etch as well, it just brings it alive rather well. Moving along, now this was the part of the kit which was a problem. We did spend a fair bit of time actually concentrating on the wing section. This is a kit that seems to be more designed along the lines of having your flaps and your air brakes and everything just open, having your wings in the folded up position, but then when it comes to actually unfolding the wings, putting your air brakes down and everything, it just doesn't quite fit, and it needs a fair bit of work. Again, our air intakes and exhaust area here, there was an inaccuracy part just here, right where the nose section is. This here was supposed to be like a nice big join line here, but we took care of that rather well. I do like it. We've got rid of any kind of join line there. It did take a fair bit of doing, but in the end we've got a more accurate model for it. Moving along some more, everything else did seem to go together rather well, not too bad. Generally sort of bringing the two halves of the model together. It was a case of where they've got those little holes and you've got the little pegs that go into the holes, we had to sort of drill them a little bit just to sort of make them a little bit deeper so it came together nicely without it sort of bulging out and making gaps all around our edges like. Apart from that, again, it didn't fit too bad. It was just that those wings, the wings on this, trying to get them in the sort of open position, as you can see here. Yeah, we did do a fair bit of filling, sanding, scribing and everything all the way around this area, and I've just broke that there actually, which is really the whole reason why we use super glue, because that there, as you can see, I've just broken it. We could just get a bit of super glue and put that in there. If we did use like Tamirex thin cement, me breaking it there could have actually, instead of making a clean break, as you can see just there, it could have potentially made it, sort of broke the actual piece properly, and it makes more of a mess when breaking it. But I'll fix that later. So back on topic here. Right, next is want to look at the model itself and sort of like what I think of it. Really, the model in general is well detailed, and we do have a lot of lovely surface detail on here. As you can see, it's taken a wash rather well. One or two places, it didn't take 100%, but we could still get that wash in there. The decals on this, they're good. They're not brilliant. They're not terrible. They're somewhere in between, but like getting a bit better. Yeah, they're a little bit hard to put down because there's lots of these sort of just long lines and everything going on all the way around. But still, you take your time and patience with it, and they do go down really well. No real sort of issues with it. Looking at the underside, again, the decals were no problem there. Sealing up our weapons bay area, doesn't quite seal up as perfectly as you want. I could have potentially put a bit more work into that, but I did just want to move along with the build. And then also looking at a bit closer, sort of at our wing section here. To open this up, if you remember, we had to get in there with filler, rescribing, sanding, all this kind of stuff. I do kind of wish, you know, maybe I did spend a little bit more time. It's not as perfect as I want it. It's not 100% there. It is good enough, I think, to sort of, you know, finish a model. But I could have spent a bit more time on there. As you can see, there is some slight sort of imperfections there. And maybe you can just see on this side as well, there's just slight imperfections, nothing major, nothing to go terrible about. I did still have to put a lot of work in to get it to that stage. It did need a little bit more work, but as I say, you know, it's acceptable, and you know, I need to move along with the build anyway. So yeah, that is a timely part to this build, but in all, let's face it, this kit is sort of one of a kind, shall we say. As far as I know, as of March 2016, I do believe if you want to build an X-47, this is it. You know, it's freedom model kits or nothing, because I don't believe anyone else has done one in 1/48 scale or in any scale, I think. Don't hold me to that. So, you know, if you do want to build this sort of new, well, you know, prototype type aircraft, which is a drone, not an actual aircraft, which is also quite surprising with this kit, how big it is. I mean, putting this in my display cabinet, it literally is just as big as an F-14 Tomcat 1/48 scale. It is actually a really big drone aircraft, which is quite surprising. It is quite cool as well to do something a little bit different, to do something that is like a B-2 stealth bomber, which is rather cool, and then to sort of paint it in like in sort of like navy markings, shall we say. Yeah, I do like it. I do like it, even with all the problems. I mean, sometimes it is good to have a bit of a challenge and tackle a couple of areas, but in the end, you know, you put the work in and the model does turn out to be a good model. So it is recommended, and if you do decide to go down the route of having your wings folded, it just makes building this model a hell of a lot easier, and makes life a lot easier by you know, folding them. But yeah, I do like it. It's definitely well recommended, and hopefully you've enjoyed this whole step-by-step series of the X-47. Hopefully you've learnt a lot, especially dealing with doggle for fits that this kit has had with the whole wings and everything. So really all that's left to do now is sort of leave you with some final reveal photos, and until the next step-by-step here at Genesis Models, my name is Bobby Waldron, and I hope you've enjoyed.